Welcome to TV Tangents with your hosts, Natalie and Rebecca. Today on the program, we're talking about the beloved 80s sitcom, Newhart. Hola, bonita señorita. Your numero uno co-host está aquí.
Oh man, that's so cute. I totally.
Have you been watching Newhart?
Is it Cupcake? That's her name. I was all like,
Cupcake.
now I just remembered. Right? As soon as you said it, Cuppers. Oh,
Yes.
your numero uno. Oh,
Love.
it's been so long since I finished watching Newhart.
Oh, really?
So now I'm all like, but you just reminded me of all of that and how cute that is.
So when we decided to watch Newhart, had you ever watched it before? Did you watch it?
Never. I never watched it before, and I watched it as much in its entirety as I could. I noticed on the Hulu or wherever I was watching at the Prime that so every so often I'd be paying attention if I wasn't binging, and it would be like skipping ahead several episodes. But so
not all of the episodes are on.
were available. Yeah.
It's on Amazon Prime, and they skip over a lot, and we will get to it later. But the last episode, which is the most important episode of the whole show, I told you there's no point in watching the show if you don't watch the last episode.
Right. Not even available.
It's not there. You have to watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which
I found out at the end. I was like, oh, I can't wait to watch this. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, what just happened?
Yeah, then what happens? No, it is like one of the most important final shows of TV history. So we'll get to that later. I have been inspired by Newhart that you and I can open a bed and breakfast.
Yes, that is the dream.
Yes, I'll write books, and you can do whatever Joanna does.
Yes, which is a lot of things apparently, but possibly. I mean, Stephanie was making breakfast at one point, so there's lots of weird things going on.
And I assume Joanna ends up doing a lot of the housekeeping because Stephanie doesn't.
Definitely is not doing that. But yeah, keeping the books and all the things. Yeah.
But I think you are the Joanna and I'm the Dick.
Yeah.
So
very true. Very true. I know. As soon as I started watching this, I'm like, yep, this is what I need to be doing. I need to open a cute bed and breakfast. That's the dream.
Yeah. But not in a cold place.
No,
because Vermont
not in a
is cold,
place.
right?
Yeah. And we wouldn't want to be cold all the time.
No,
although that's where you get like the ski people. But no, we want to be way more like
But we could do
chill.
like the Golden Palace, you know, because what are they in Miami or whatever?
Absolutely.
And yeah,
we
could do that. Maybe not Miami.
And then, I mean, you can make a cute little B&B anywhere and make it, if you have things to do near you, then you can make it work and it's cute. So it's perfect.
Newhart is an American sitcom that ran on CBS from October 25th, 1982 to May 21st, 1990.
Wow.
What? That was my
birthday.
15th birthday. And I'm sure I watched the show, the final episode, because I do remember watching it. It's about a nonfiction writer and his wife who buy a 200-year-old inn in an unidentified town in Vermont. And my family watched this show all the time. And I went to a very small church school, so I don't know if the general population of middle schoolers in the late 80s were watching Newhart, but I know that everyone in my middle school was.
Interesting.
There were 9 people in my 8th grade class, so we all watched it and would talk about it.
Yeah, I don't remember ever watching it as a kid, so definitely wasn't something that was on my radar. Heard about things over the years and I never even realized that this was Larry and this is my brother Daryl, my other brother Daryl. I did not know that was this show. Like I'd always heard that. And for whatever in my brain, I'm like, that's on the show sometime. And so I didn't realize it was even this show. So I definitely did not see, and I kind of didn't even know the premise of the show, which is interesting. So
after every week's episode, the next day in school, someone would talk about what Larry, Daryl, and Daryl did in that episode because they were like the cult favorite.
Yes.
Everybody loved them.
That makes sense.
they were hilarious. And my parents love this show. I think they have the entire collection on maybe DVD, maybe.
Oh,
I don't think it's a VHS because it's not that big.
probably not.
But anyway,
Very cool
yeah, no, it's a great song. Great song.
song.
I'm going to start over. It's a great show, and I hope you enjoyed it. Did you like it?
I did, very much so. I discovered with this show, though, that before we kind of get into everything about the show, it's one of those shows that I watched it very fast. Like I said, I watched every episode that was available to me on Amazon Prime.
That's a lot.
It was. And during the time, I feel like it was it already like this spring? I don't know. It seems like it was a long time ago when I finished the show. I had a lot of time where I'd watch like 4 hours of it at a time. Sometimes when I was like home in the evening or if I had some time off. It's one of those shows, and I've discovered this as we've been doing this podcast now for so long, that there are some shows that you just love. Like, it's a great show and you watch it, but there's not a lot of story that you have to follow along with. Mm-hmm. Like, there's not ever changing, like an ever changing dynamic.
No.
A little bit.
Sometimes you wonder where a character came from.
Yes.
But that's the extent of it.
Yeah. And only during the time, I think, when the two, Stephanie and what's his name? Michael, like kind of how their relationship develops.
Yeah.
But even then, not really as much. So it's one of those shows where you can kind of just be watching and doing something, but you still know what's going on. It was still like really like I couldn't wait to watch it. But I always find that interesting when we watch certain shows, whether or not I like it or not, or what my dynamic of watching it is. There's some shows I will be like, if I have to go to the bathroom, it's pause, run up, go to the bathroom, come back. Or if I'm like, or somebody texts me and I almost have to read it like with intent, I'm like, wait, pause this because otherwise I'm going to miss what's going on. This is one of those shows that I didn't feel like I had to do that, but still loved the show.
Right.
And so it's very interesting because it's kind of like, again, it doesn't have anything that you'd really miss a ton of.
Right. You're not going to miss the story because I agree with that because I watch it while I'm working. And so if I need to go to the bathroom or go get some water or something, I can leave it running because I'm still going to know, like the plot is simple enough in each episode that you're not going to miss the plot.
Right.
But you will miss something funny that they said. And you don't want to miss funny stuff. So the plot is simple, but the way it's executed is amazing.
Yeah.
So like the jokes are so funny and like so dry that you don't want to miss them. But it's okay if you do step away for a minute.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely true. And
definitely. And I've noticed that about other shows we've watched where it's kind of like an interesting dynamic. So I'm always like, well, this is one of those where I really loved it. I couldn't wait to watch it as I kept going on and on and on. But it was never where I'm like, okay, I can't follow along because or like when I didn't notice that I was missing episodes because you don't miss any kind of plot line.
No. And anything you need to know, they tell you.
Yeah. It was kind of just rehashing and everything, which is great. And again, to be a show based on pretty much the exact same thing the whole time. I mean, and again, they're added in. So it's people who come in there. It's the dynamic of the relationships to go for that long and have continual like comic value and to still be a really good show through. And I never really found that there was a lull. We've talked about lulls over the sitcoms we've watched where sometimes like as kids get older or whatever happens, you get into that like, oh, the last couple seasons. This was great because it was that dynamic never changed. And to me, it was always, it was always funny. And I really looked forward
nothing ever does change except that Michael and Stephanie's relationships changed, and that's about it. Yeah, nobody like they would bring in characters. The first two seasons though, not great.
I didn't think they were not great. It took me a minute to get in the first few episodes. I actually really. I enjoyed the character of who's the guy in the first couple seasons.
Kirk.
Oh
my God.
Not that I enjoyed him so much. It was his delivery was so good. I mean, I just found him to be a really good actor. And I'm like, this is really funny. And so getting into it, just in the beginning, I was kind of like, all right, I'm getting into a new show I've never seen. But it didn't take long because I remember thinking, okay, this is funny. But he kind of cracked me up in a weird way where I was like, I don't really like this guy, but oh my gosh, this is funny.
Oh, yeah, he's so funny. Yeah. And like, it's the early 80s. So, and you've got 3 programming options. So people kind of didn't like him. And they were like, he's too mean.
Yeah.
But he was funny. And then they got rid of him. So, but I felt like the first 2 seasons, they hadn't really figured out what the audience wants yet.
True.
Because I'm not saying they're not watchable. But like the last 3 seasons of the show are like crack. And you can't stop watching them.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to watch the next episode of Newhart. So
yeah.
That's
Yeah, that was definitely the case.
So the theme song was composed by Henry Mancini and performed by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And this plays over images of beautiful New England scenery, which is actually not in Vermont. This is in New Hampshire. And you know how I don't know anything about geography, so that's probably in New England. But these are actually outtakes from the 1981 movie On Golden Pond, starring Henry Fonda and Katharine Hepburn.
Interesting.
Right. And in part of the scene you can see in the car, you can actually, if you look closely, see them in the car. But we all had these tiny tube TVs, so you can see that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
William Lantow, I think that's how you pronounce it, who played Chester, was also in that movie.
Oh.
So weird coincidence, or maybe not so much. I don't know.
Very interesting.
The exterior shots of the Stratford are really the Waybury Inn in Middlebury, Vermont. And you can go there. It's a place.
Oh, it's on our list.
Yes, but the exterior is wildly inconsistent with the interior.
Shocking.
Does not match up at all.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't actually walk into the Stratford.
Dang it.
But you can definitely have your picture taken in front of it like I did with the Mary Tyler Moore house, which is the same situation.
Yes. We need to do that. And then, and then somebody needs to buy it and turn it into that on the inside.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? Like the Brady Bunch house?
Exactly.
It just sold, by the way.
I know. Somebody needs to do that with all the historical houses. And good luck figuring out the Full House house.
Oh my God, I could live in the Full House house, but that's not what we're talking about.
No.
So Newhart and its cast were nominated for 25 Emmy Awards, 6 Golden Globes, and 4 TV Land Awards, but they didn't win any of those.
What?
No awards.
Interesting.
It did win 4 Viewers for Quality Television Awards, which I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. It's like the Soapy that Joey wins on Friends.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, they were nominated all the time because it was a great show and people loved it.
But you know what? I almost wonder if at some point we have to go back and look when people were nominated. Because you know what? You know who probably won some show that we love.
Right.
And
yeah,
so,
that's probably true.
We probably need to go back and be like, oh, this is why Newhart did win because
they're up against Cheers or something.
Yes, Cheers, exactly.
That's true. You're right, because there was a lot of good TV.
80s and 90s, man.
So going through this show, I think, first of all, Dick, played by Bob Newhart, is grumpy. He's just like a grumpy man who everybody annoys him and everybody's annoyed, and he just can't believe what's going on around him. So I think if they made this show today, not like a revamp, but like if we didn't have the old show, we made it today, I think it'd be shot like The Office. And I think it would be called Nobody Likes Dick. Because that's like the premise of the whole show is that they're all just like, Dick, are you not understanding what I'm saying? What's going on here? And he's like, are you all crazy?
That's true. That is true. He's kind of the curmudgeon. Is that the word?
He is.
He's very like, looks at everyone like they're dumb and just it's like he's putting up with people.
And when he says funny things, which is constantly, they're funny to him. Yeah. But they're never funny to anybody else.
No.
He just kind of laughs at himself.
He's got that good dry humor going too, which is
hilarious.
Awesome.
Oh, and Joanna doesn't really, I mean, sometimes they get along, but sometimes she's just like, I don't know why I don't know why we're doing this.
Yeah, I feel like they were an interesting couple. In the beginning, they're like, oh, hey, we bought this inn or whatever, and we're going to run it. And yeah, they're almost like there wasn't a whole ton, every once in a great while, there wasn't a ton of like romance between them.
No.
Or a lot of just like, oh, we're a couple kind of thing. There were a few times here and there, but.
And Joanna would try.
Yeah.
Like there was the time that she wanted to get remarried.
Yeah.
Because when they got married, it was like a quickie wedding. And then Dick wanted to get on the plane right away so they could get the cheaper fare.
Yeah.
And they got married like with a group of other people. And so she was like, we have to get remarried because our first wedding wasn't good enough. And she's all annoyed with him because he's like, whatever. And I'm like, Joanna, seriously, why are we doing this?
Yes. Why are you with Dick if you don't even.
But in the beginning, it wasn't like that. It's almost like they developed that because people liked it. And it is funny to see the way that Joanna puts up with him.
Yeah. It seemed like, though, that they weren't married long enough for them to seem like this old married couple that's just very comfortable with each other.
Well, they're living in rural Vermont.
That's true.
And they don't seem to have a TV.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the bedroom.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, because they came from New York City. So, yeah, just very interesting dynamic with those two.
And Newhart is in one of those little communities that has like a community identity where you just want to be there and like know the people. Even though we very rarely see the like outside of the inn, sometimes we go to like the city hall or whatever it is, or the cafe next door, which I never realized in all the years I watched this show. I thought the inn was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't realize the Minuteman was next to them.
Was right next door.
There's a park across the street, and that they had a carriage house.
Oh, yeah. We find that out way later, yes.
And Green Acres is another one of those where, like, if you watch enough of it, you start to hallucinate. Maybe I'm the only one. Start to hallucinate that you're, like, in the town and that you know these people.
That is true.
And also, whenever you see the name Dick Martin in the credits, I don't know if you noticed that, but I did. That's Dick Martin from Laugh-In. He directed 33 episodes, including the finale.
Oh, my goodness.
And on our TikTok, I have a short bloopers reel where it's one of the first seasons, and Bob Newhart accidentally calls Mary Fran.
Oh, goodness.
Did you not turn... Natalie, did you not tell me to turn off my phone?
I turned my ringer down. I did not remind you to turn yours down.
I usually remember, but this is... They want to know. They want to talk to me about vaccinations. They're like, we're doing a survey and blah, blah. Anyway, so we have a TikTok where Bob Newhart accidentally calls Mary Fran Emily, and she's just freaking out.
She's
and
all like, what?
Dick Martin walks into the shot, and I was like, that's Dick Martin from Laugh-In. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. So the Stratford, like we said, is a 200-year-old inn, and a man named McMahon owned the Stratford in the 60s. But he had to sell the place after an archery accident involving a high-powered crossbow and tequila shooters. This, according to George, who knows everything about the Stratford.
Because George has been there his whole life.
Yes.
George is awesome.
He's like the
handyman
third
George
generation
Utley.
handyman. Yeah.
And he basically grew up there. So it's like, they were the handyman. So he knows everything. And he worked for the previous owners. And he's also one of those who's like, he can play a little bit dumb, but also he's super sweet. He's like the best guy ever. He does everything for everyone. And he's kind of a jack of all trades. He's the handyman, but he takes bags up to rooms.
Yes, he does.
And I mean, he considers Dick to be his best friend. And I think there's even an episode where he's like, I like you more than you like me to Dick. And there was like a whole thing about it. And I was like, oh, and Dick's just so dry. And so like, we don't have to talk about it. Can we just be friends? Like, and
I sympathize with him so much in this. I'm like, like whenever anyone tries to hug him, he's like, nah, that's okay. I get it.
Yeah. But yeah, George is awesome. He's just, and everyone loves him. And he's like the guy who everyone goes to. And even though a little bit like Stephanie later is just kind of like, with Stephanie though, everything's ew. But she like loves him. I mean, it's like he's just like everybody's either grandpa or uncle. He's like that guy who you just love.
And there's an episode where Stephanie's like, "Oh, we're like we're friends," and so they're talking about how they're friends to each other, and it's really cute. And because George is like, "Yeah, we're friends, and friends do this for each other, and whatever," and it's really cute because he's like so content in where he is. Like he lives. Where does he live? Like above the...
It's kind of like he's like in the attic of the inn above the kitchen.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it seems as if they made quarters for someone to live there. And maybe it was originally like a chef person or something, because when you come in the inn, there's like the main lobby and the stairs that go up to the rooms, but that's also where Dick and Joanna have their room and Stephanie has a room. And then you go through the doors and then there's like the eating area. Then you go through another set of doors is the kitchen. And then you're in the back of the inn for anything that happens. And I'm assuming that George lives above.
Yeah, it seems like those stairs are right outside that door, the kitchen door, because you very rarely see the kitchen.
Yeah.
When you do, it looks like they're there. And then we go up into his room, which Joanna at some point tried to redecorate.
That was hilarious.
And he's like, no, the rug goes here.
Yeah. And he didn't want to sit on anything because he's like, it's all new. And like, he didn't want to live in it then. It was like,
and he's had so many opportunities to like leave the Stratford and to like, he's had romances and he's always just like, no, I'm just George. I'm just going to stay here.
And what did he do at one point? Go to sell cars or something?
Yes.
And then he was like, yeah, it's not for me.
No, I'm going to, it's great. And Stephanie never does any work, but she still gets paid.
Right.
And she's always trying to get George to do her work for her.
Yeah, that was the big difference between
Leslie,
who was there for the first couple of years. And so now so Leslie was great. She was the maid. She was like officially the maid. You'd always see her working hard.
Yeah.
And then, and that was just it too, because Kirk was in love with her.
Yes.
And Stephanie actually came around at one point and visited, right? Because she was Leslie's cousin. And then when Leslie decided to go off to school is when Stephanie came back like, oh, she'll come over and take over my maid's job. But she's literally like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Well, she had never been away from home. So she was like, yeah, but she needed, it was a Rachel Green kind of situation where she's spoiled, but she wants to be on her own. And Leslie's character was too nice. It's like Kirk was too mean, but he was funny. And Leslie was too nice and not funny at all.
Yeah.
And so the writers and producers and whatever felt like she didn't really contribute enough to the show. So they got rid of her and made the extreme opposite of her, which is Stephanie.
Stephanie, most definitely. Which is good because she comes in and she really is. She's hilarious because it's like the spoiledness makes her also hilarious. That she has a job that she really doesn't want to do. And it's just kind of on and on. But she's very funny and everything is like, but yeah, ew. She's like anything she's supposed to be made to do.
Well, the first couple seasons, they're trying to be like your standard sitcom. And then they start adding these characters with extreme personalities.
Yeah.
Like everyone except for Joanna and Dick have extreme personalities.
It's true.
Like George is extremely this way, this small town handyman. And every once in a while, a little bit different personality comes out. And then you've got Michael, who's like extremely Michael.
And Michael's like the producer, right? Or Dick becomes a host for Vermont Today.
Yeah.
And Michael's like a producer and he's neurotic and crazy. But him and Stephanie are like the perfect pair. And they just like fall in love. And
let me tell you, when I used to watch this as a kid, I could not stand Michael. He annoyed me so much.
Yeah.
And now I started watching the show after having not watched it for decades. I was like, oh my gosh, he's my favorite character.
He's hilarious.
He's amazing.
He really is. He's a little bit, he is kind of definitely whipped by her.
But he likes it.
He likes it. And he's very, like, at one point, there's multiple times, like, she's like, I'm going to go up and exfoliate. And he's like, oh, can I watch? And he follows her up the stairs. Like, it's just funny stuff like that where, again, and calls her Cupcake, Cuppers, all the different things, all the pet names. But they are like the perfect match. He will indulge her selfishness and her into her own self. I mean, besides being selfish, just in her own looks and all her demands, and he's fine with it.
And they totally understand each other, and they're perfect for each other. Like they break up so many times, but then there's the episode where they're broken up, but they want each other to find someone, so they go to the mall
and
to
judge
find
people together.
And I'm like, see, there's nobody else for them but them.
Exactly. They're both like, oh, look at her. No, this, that, whatever. And then they're both judging.
Yeah.
Because, he thought he found someone early on, right? Who was like another producer or something. And because she was like not so, definitely not so into herself. And I remember Michael being in the relationship, and then he was trying to make her like Stephanie, and she's like, no, I got this for you, and he's like, I don't understand. And it was so funny. And then that's why he realized they were together. And then when they did break up for an extended period, they're trying to find people for each other.
But there was a point where Stephanie was like, okay, maybe I'm too much, and maybe I should let Michael be a person as well. In season 4, there's an episode where Joanna accidentally joins a cult. You watch that one?
I think so.
And she just has like no friends in the town, whatever the town is. And so she meets a group of people and invites them over to the inn for their like little meeting or whatever. And it turns out they're trying to marry her to another one of the cult members. And they're like, but this is a satanic cult. And she's like, wait, what? And Dick's just kind of standing over there like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Loved that one.
Got yourself into it.
But I also wonder, in the house, like, how many rooms do they have? Because
I've always wondered.
they never seem to have more than 1 or 2 groups of guests. But, like, they live in rooms.
Yeah.
And Stephanie has a room. But if Michael buys her everything she ever wants, where does she keep it?
Right. And her room's pretty big. We see her room a few times, and she's got like a whole closet of shoes and all the things. And it is very interesting because the hallway up there is not very big. And then, like, if you go to the top of the stairs, Dick and Joanna always kind of just go right to the right, as if there's just like a master suite over there. Right. And then all the other rooms are the other way. You start to wonder, though, like, is it just because there's multiple people staying there, we just don't see them? And then there's like, maybe the hall goes all the way around, like the set where you're in the lobby and you just don't know it. Maybe it's like...
Well, there's one point where we do see the entire balcony upstairs that overlooks the lobby.
Yeah.
When George makes his handyman board game and everyone comes to the inn.
Yes.
And everyone, for some reason, is like manically playing this board game to get to 1,000,000 points. And so you see people sitting at tables up on the balcony. There's like 4 different tables of people up there.
That's true.
Really interesting.
It's kind of like, it's hard to tell. And again, you look at it from the outside, it's not very big.
No.
So maybe that is the case. Maybe it's just the fact that this is like a glorified home, and there's only like 3 or 4 other rooms besides where they live.
I mean, to be honest, I once stayed in a bed and breakfast that was just like a very old home or like hotel, but it only had 1 bathroom per floor, which I was not aware of beforehand.
I wouldn't be able to handle that.
But yeah, they had like 10 rooms in the upstairs. So,
and then I'm thinking about how many times we see everybody at breakfast and there's other people
there's
eating.
So many people, but maybe they're townspeople.
You could just come in and eat, though, I would assume. Yeah.
But I don't know who's going to serve you because Stephanie doesn't
barely
want to.
can make the food for people. And then she's all like, well, whatever, go get it yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a cafe next door. So yeah, interesting.
Nobody's going to that cafe.
No, not especially when Larry, Daryl, and Daryl take over.
Who is your favorite Daryl?
Oh goodness.
Since we're talking about them,
I think Now, I can't remember if it's Daryl number 1 or Daryl number 2. It's the blonde Daryl.
The blonde, yeah.
Yeah, think I like him better.
He's got great face. He's got more facial expressions
Yes.
than the dark-haired Daryl.
Daryl,
They're both hilarious.
yeah, dark-haired Daryl salutes, right? And then blonde-haired Daryl does kind of like a little, like with his finger, he just does like a little acknowledgement when he's introduced.
And those guys, the actors, said that they would make up their own script in their heads, like between the two of them, like what those two were thinking or what they would say if they were speaking, so that they could make those facial expressions. And it's so funny watching them.
Yeah, I do love those guys. And Larry is just funny too, because he's another one. He's very dry and very, and of course they're like, they're eating squirrels or whatever in the beginning, and they all sleep in the same room in like long john pajamas. It's a very funny dynamic, but then they take over the cafe after Kirk is
leaves.
Gone.
And they serve like roadkill and stuff.
And everybody tries to help them make it nice, but yeah, it's just an you don't see a ton of the cafe after that. That's kind of like an afterthought.
Yeah, you really don't. And you only see their cabin a couple times. Like when Dick gets kicked out by Joanna.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure why he couldn't stay in the inn. Maybe they didn't have rooms left, but like, and I don't know if it's the time that she dreamt that he had been with another woman or something.
He tried sleeping on the couch, and then people were coming in, so it was loud. He tried to find all the different places where he could sleep.
Yeah, so those guys were only supposed to be in one episode.
Yeah.
But of course, the audience reaction was like so big. They're like, okay, they're the cult part of the show that everybody knows, and that's what people think of.
No.
They also are obsessed with Candace Bergen.
Oh, that's right.
And they mention her all the time. They have a picture of her on the back of their, like on the inside of their cabin door.
Oh my God, they're so funny.
And they find a pig at one point, and they call her Miss Stephanie.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the things that I remembered from watching the original, showing of it, because that's the last time I watched this show. But there was a lot that I remembered, and I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, that pig was awesome. And then they told her that, oh, it's Miss Stephanie. Well, because same thing. They were all pretty much like, well, Stephanie gets lost out in the like snow somehow too. And
Stephanie the person?
Yeah, Stephanie the person, not Stephanie the pig. And she ends up like at their cabin. And that's when, and it's like those guys were all like in love with her.
Oh, yeah.
And isn't there an episode where she needs a blood transfusion?
Yes, and she finds out that it was
Daryl's
blood.
And she freaks out because she's all, ew. And then he's just like heartbroken.
Yes, he's all sad.
And it becomes one of those like after school special kind of episodes where, because she ends up being kind of like, oh, well, okay.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but we are out of time.
Ooh.
We're out of time in this episode of TV Tangents.
Oh my goodness.
We're going to go long because we have so much to say about Newhart.
Yes.
And Natalie, you would be hard pressed to find a fiddle fitter than me, but we have to move on.
Oh.
Thought I'd throw a Michael line in there.
I like it.
I love his lines.
I love Michael. I know. He's so funny.
So why don't we come back next week and talk about the cast and the guest stars of Newhart and whatever else
Sounds
you
like a
talk
plan.
about.
I like it.
And look us up on the TikTok because we have some Newhart clips on the TikTok along with other things. We're also on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group. If you want to come in there and talk about TV related stuff, we'll let you in. And we have an Instagram and Twitter, which I still call Twitter. I don't care what anybody calls it.
Me too.
We don't use it very often, but
yes.
Yeah. You got anything else to say at this moment?
Not at this moment. I'm gonna come back and say all the things.
Okay, we'll wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Bye.